This is Naked by the Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. Brought to you by Vladi and Nektarios Lolios. And remember to subscribe, follow, and rate Naked to help us share it with the world.
Hi, Vladi. How are you?
I'm good, actually. I'm sitting in the air-conditioned room, and I'm like, what a privilege, for real. So I'm in Pakistan. Some of you guys might remember that we were planning the travels, and we indeed traveled. I think it's a few days back. Again, it feels already like we've been here for a few weeks, and we actually just arrived on Monday night. Karachi is super, super hot. And today we had this special experience. So we went to a phone market, which is this, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like lots of noise, lots of people, everybody selling. You can't think about, being sort of being cautious of COVID. Is just you are mingling with everybody. There's a lot of taste, smell, everything, but it's beautiful in that sense. So when you arrive then into air-conditioned room, you start, I have my water bottle, I have the good air, and you are like, I don't need much more. So it was an interesting sort of setup for me to record this reflection, because I was listening on the way here, bits of our conversation with Dan, and I was just thinking like, what a privileged conversation this is, and I know that, part of me was sort of like, but it's a very important conversation. I was glad that we had it. And I know I jumped into the subject straight away, but it was just more the reflection of where I'm coming from today, where I was just thinking that those people who I work with today and who are around me, I mean, something like a brain nutrition doesn't even cross, like it's miles away, 1,000 miles away of anything like that. So it's sort of staying with me. We can explore deeper, but I'm good then, I'm feeling good. How about you? I know you had your travels. I can't remember whether when we were recording last time you were still in Greece.
I was in Athens, yeah. Actually, it was only there since a couple of days. So I'm back in London and I'm locked up. It's coming to the end of the 5th day where I haven't left the building because of the British COVID restrictions. So I'm having my second test upon my return today. And if the results are negative, I can leave tomorrow. So as soon as I get my results, I'm free to wander. It's interesting to get a daily call from the track and trace people, making sure you are where you said you would be and all that. It's a new experience. I mean, if somebody would have told me a year ago that somebody would be calling me on a daily basis, making sure that I'm at home, because that's what I committed to do, right? I would feel this is weird. This is a bit kind of big brother state. But now you go, no, I understand. It's for the safety of everybody. And luckily the weather's nice. So it helps looking out of the window and seeing blue skies, because the thought of this being a dark and rainy and cold environment on top of everything else is quite scary.
Yeah.
And I'm getting used to doing these tests by myself, which is...
That's true. You can, that's also part of that. Yeah, sorry, I'm all about privileges today. I was just thinking, like, even getting those calls daily is like, you're so privileged. But how is? I think it's going to go through this half an hour. But how is Greece? I mean, how did you enjoy it? How did you feel? I mean, we're speaking about mental health here. How was your well-being?
So I haven't really been very public about my reasons to go to Greece, but it was very important for my own well-being. It was all related to my mom passing away last year and me needing to reconnect with the country without my parents being there anymore. So the first week was meetings, just meeting people that I've been talking to online in the last year. And the second week was family time to perform some traditions in the Greek kind of culture, where you kind of have church ceremonies and memorial ceremonies because it's been a year since my mom passed away. So I have to say, I've come back and I felt really good, still do, to the point where I was talking to my therapist on Friday, whilst I was still in Greece. And I spoke for about 5 minutes, and then I looked at her and said, I think I'm done today. And she was like, oh, let's stay with this for a bit. And I was like, you know what? I'm actually, I didn't say it, but I was thinking, no, I actually am okay today. I don't feel the need to talk a lot more because I just also cherished being in a good place, knowing that flying back would cause me anxiety because of all the stories that I was reading about 6-hour queues in Heathrow Airport and not really knowing how the whole testing things works afterwards and all. But guess what? I got through it. It was easy. I'm here and it's fine. It's nice. It's nice to be able to have done something that you knew was important, but you didn't really know how it was going to work out, and coming back and having had a positive experience after 3 years of really kind of difficult times was actually very nice. And the weather was glorious, which really helped. And the food was nice, which really helped. So
I'm glad to hear. Glad to hear. It sort of sounds, listening to you, that it, and I don't know, so hence just asking, sounds a little bit like a closure. Could it be?
Yeah, there was an element of that.
Another sort of piece of puzzle.
It's funny. Closure sounds a bit final, but I went into Greece with this desire for a redefinition more than close. If that means closing one chapter, opening a new one. Yeah,
evolution
absolutely.
of that. Yeah. No, I hear you. There are things in my personal life that I think I might talk to you guys at some point, not yet ready, but they're also sort of a major importance, and it's a major change. And what you just said about that, the closure feels very black and white and sort of definite. I felt the same way. It was more of an evolution into a different phase, different form of a relationship, which is beautiful in some way. Good to hear. So what about your brain nutrition?
It's kind of funny. When we talked to Dan, he talked a lot about brain care, and part of it was the food we take in. But when I was listening back to the episode, I actually got stuck on a different piece in our conversation.
Okay, what was that?
It was the fact that he talks about having experienced a variety of different symptoms over a long period of time and consistently ignored them. And for me, coming into our chat today, that was one thing I wanted us to explore or just talk about. It's like, what makes us go, this is bad, but I'm just going to accept it.
Yeah.
Or I'm just going to find excuses, or I'm going to,
be functional.
Be functional, but also just because we talk a lot about that narrative that we all buy into it, this kind of false narrative of entrepreneurship, right? Where suffering is part of the journey, right? And we didn't really use that word before, but there's an element of martyrdom, right? It's like, I'm a martyr. I'm sacrificing myself for the greater glory of entrepreneurship. Because we were told that this is part of the game. This is the only way the game works, is by you ruining yourself, killing yourself, making yourself ill, right? So goes back to, and I don't remember which one of our guests said that, it's like, if you break your leg, you go to the hospital, right? So there's people who break their leg and their arm and their back, and they've got cut wounds and everything else, and they do not do anything about it because they believe, and they believe, and they don't act on it because it's part of it. Just, and it's kind of funny because when I was thinking about this, I have a particular friend in mind who is an entrepreneur, who is the biggest baby when it comes to colds. He's like a proper man flu guy. You know what? When he has like 37 degrees temperature, he's dying, right? And I was thinking, so you've got that, but at the same time, you see that he works his 15 hours a day. And that doesn't translate into, I'm actually suffering with other stuff.
Yeah. What I was thinking of when you said this was I went back to the book that I'm reading right now from Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth, and he talks a lot about ego. So I'm learning, I'm also like going through this therapy, and my therapist said, let's explore the ego. And we were exploring it also in connection with where do we take validation from, and why is the validation important? And I was just thinking, listening to everything you said, is that if we see signals from the wider environment and society that actually this is celebrated, there is some recognition from it, because that's, again, I think we are coming back to how we even started Future Farm, right? Which was like all those articles in media in TechCrunch, like sleeping 5 hours and actually, depriving yourself because the business, because that's the priority, and everything else sort of goes into back end. I think part of me goes naturally into, set of the standard of success, or the values that are recognized have been set. So I'm following the model, right? So yeah, I think, I don't know, surely, whether it has to do a lot with the ego, but that's where I went in my mind.
And it totally resonates, right? Because we talked about ego before, we talked about self-worth before. I think when we talked to Dan, I find it just very insightful that he sort of spoke about this very quickly at the beginning, that it wasn't just one thing, right? There was depression, there was insomnia, there was anxiety, there was a variety of different things, but all of them were like, it needed to come to a certain point of ignoring previous instances for him to even start exploring what's going on. Yeah. And this bizarre loop of insomnia causes anxiety, and anxiety causes insomnia. So it just goes into a loop. So I'm anxious because I don't get enough sleep, and I don't get enough sleep because I'm anxious. And I mean, of course, we have to talk about the fact that he has opened up a very different perspective to how to address this. But I just wanted us to take a moment to acknowledge that, unlike some of our other guests who talk about one particular manifestation or something that they started experiencing and they did something about it when they came to that moment, that with Dan, it sounded like he was going deeper and deeper and deeper with different things.
Actually, when I was listening to Dan, I was reminded of our conversation with Selma about the postpartum depression. And maybe some of you guys have listened to that episode where she was describing that her mode of coping is to become functional and operational, right? To the point where you cannot do anymore, where your physical body doesn't let you go further. And I actually was thinking like, well, okay, there are patterns. So this happens obviously to more of us, that we push ourselves mentally and physically to the level that, I guess it's really the somatic experience. You just cannot go further. I mean, yeah, I remember I have actually a few people, even in Slovakia around me, like my previous business partner in Slovakia, Peter Gabreš, is quite vocal about this. He had such a major burnout and he was also similar to this, like he used to be very functional, and then it hit him to the level that he found himself in the bed for 2 months and he was unable to touch a computer. So since then ever, and until today, and this is like a few years back, he uses like a tablet and he writes, so he cannot type. And he was saying literally the physical experience was so shocking for him. So, I mean, it's interesting, like if individual experience, right? Like how far do we have to go to reflect and understand that something is not working right? Do you have those signals? And I know we unpacked the signals number of times on these reflections, but like maybe again, like how good you feel today after, some dips and some waves, to identify that, I don't want to hit the ground.
I think my loop works. My check-in works because I had to learn this after all these years. I don't think I'm blind to the signals. I don't think it necessarily translates in me responding to them in the right way.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you because I was like, I can see my signals, but I'm not sure if I always act on them,
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
ignorance kicks in.
But there is this piece about, and kind of some people know about my famous week of the letter M, where I did Melbourne, Mexico City, and Mumbai in 1 week. And I was carrying it as a badge of honor. I was kind of proud of it. And just looking back at it 2 years later or 3 years later, going, what the hell was I doing to my body? How many hours on a plane? But there was also this thing, and we can sort of link it a little bit to the conversation with Dan. Forget about brain nutrition. I just didn't eat the right thing for my body just to be healthy overall, because I was more in this mode. I eat whatever I can because I was so tired that I needed my treats. And there was this piece about you go into a city and you're there for 48 hours and you meet with people and you have a drink or two. And of course you'll have dessert. And then you wake up in the middle of the night because your body doesn't know what time it is. And you'll have a snack that you wouldn't have. So there was definitely something that was somewhat self-destructive, or just not, I need to look after myself, because as a balance kind of action to all the bad stuff that happened to me, like the flight and the jet lag and everything else, and going, I should be healthy. I should eat vegetables and vitamins and nutrients. And no, none of that. It was like, yeah, bring the chocolate, bring the cake, bring the booze. The signals for that, they were probably also acknowledged, but it doesn't mean that I would do anything right.
Yeah. It's interesting, like the part of me, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to link it to where I am today, to the context, because like we are talking global, right? So every country, every condition sort of matters. And this applies, I'm going to apply this to both of us and people like us, where my inner reaction to even seeing my sort of neglecting of that nutrition, the basic nutrition you are saying, right? Where it's like, okay, I'll hustle through it, whatever, I'll manage. And then, my inner reaction is sort of like a little bit of anger and frustration with myself, because it's such a responsibility I should take seriously. Seeing again people where they live on a sugarcane juice as a source of nutrition, and if they could, they would reach out for it. And like for me, it's just those conditions are such a reflection and a mirror of the privilege. It's just and responsibility. I mean, yeah, for me, it's interesting, like how a strong mirror and driver this experience here in Pakistan.
I should say something meaningful and serious, but sugarcane juice is just delicious and you can't get it here. So every time I'm in Asia, that's one of the first things I go for.
I'll see if I can pack some with me for you. On another note, one more thing I wanted to mention was about the sleeping pills, where Dan was describing that he went to the doctor, right? And he was sort of trying to treat his insomnia, and the doctor didn't have many answers for him. And he was like this prescription of sleeping pills, and then didn't take them, and was sort of talking about like, I don't want to stay on the Band-Aid level, but I want to go and solve for the root cause. My mind again went back to our guest on the first series where we talked to Emma, where she was also talking about burnout and depression, anxiety, and where her experience with the doctor was actually also a kick towards taking a therapy, right? Where the prescription didn't come. So I was just thinking like how very different experiences we can also get, and guidance that we seek outside. You remember also Michael Freeman, like our latest guest, actually, where the psychiatrist and psychologist, where he was saying that a lot of therapists are not, didn't went through the education so that they can actually, they're able to diagnose, let's say, ADHD properly for an entrepreneur. In some way, it was like a little bit like overwhelming in terms of that. You don't really know what guidance are you getting. I don't know if you had any sort of reflections yourself on this.
It's an interesting point, because only a couple of weeks ago I was having coffee with a friend, and she started having anxiety attacks. And she went through the same process where she went to a medical professional, and she was instantly prescribed antidepressants to help with it. There was no exploration about what's causing it. Are there any lifestyle changes, anything you can do to deal with it? And interestingly enough, her path was also via a nutritionist, that she actually changed her diet and she was taking a fair amount of supplements. So there is something about Western medicine that looks instantly, and we're generalizing here, of course, right, at quick fixes. And sleeping pills are so prevalent, and all the kind of the whole opiate crisis in the US. And there's so much available that is just easy to prescribe because it fixes the surface. And that was quite insightful in a conversation with Dan about how he started just digging deeper. And it wasn't only the fact that people don't know about certain supplements, but it was also that getting the right dosage and getting the right supplements is also very expensive. Which I found also interesting. So the motivation for forget about our mental health conversation, but just how somebody's looking to start a business and their motivation to start a business. I found that actually really I loved hearing, okay, I experienced something, I found the solution, and I built a business to actually help people get this easier and better quality, which is what you want a business to be, right? So purely from somebody who works with founders and entrepreneurs was just nice to go, okay, somebody's actually doing something good here.
The intrinsic purpose was very strong through the episode. And, it was funny because when he was describing his first burnout within that successful company from outside, he basically was describing the lack of purpose, or he was not really caring about what he's doing, right? Impact creating led him to a burnout. Thank you very much. No. Later. Sorry. Nektarios will, or maybe let's not cut this. And this happens live. I've had some people coming in. Just coming back to Dan and his burnout was that how strong for him it was a signal of, or it could lead him to something like a burnout. And then the path of finding that deep intrinsic motivation led him to building heights. I mean, it was beautiful to see. So curious, have you considered looking for the supplements and whether it's heights or something else?
I've tried using supplements before for a variety of reasons, because I had all sorts of things, physical things that I dealt with. And I did see a material difference. I actually don't think at the moment I'm at a place where I feel I need that kind of support. So it's really more for, maybe I should do this preemptively, right? Rather than waiting until something happens. But
I was just thinking about that.
What about you? Yeah. I was
actually thinking about that. It's not easy, the journey that, heights are on, because as an entrepreneur, it's quite low still for me. It didn't climb up high enough to see it as a priority. I was thinking about the journey that they're going through in terms of really normalizing it and bringing it. Part of me, and this might be also surely it is the experience from childhood where you see those supplements on the TV and he's like, call this number and order those pills. And the part of me is still fighting a little bit that bias. So I was like, interesting. It was super interesting, very rich conversation. I'm not there yet that I would make the buy-in, or I haven't. No, that's probably not true. I haven't yet landed in a place to put enough priority to it, to actually think through it. I think that's what it is. But I'm glad we had that conversation. I'm glad we know Dan, so we can always use that channel, and we can further promote to people who are ready. The fact that I'm not ready, or yourself, it's just our personal experience. So yeah.
Wait, supplements make assumptions when they hear the word. People instantly think very much along the lines of what you described, but also. There have been cases where, it's an industry that's given itself a bad name. And I think that's why the battle that Dan's fighting with heights is is quite tough, right? But
Yeah.
I loved how eloquent he was about what it actually does to you. And I mean, when I started my homeopathy treatment for my hay fever, I did this as a last resort. I mean, my mindset was, what's the worst that can happen? And then 6 months later, I managed to eat an apple for the first time in 20 years because I haven't been able to do that before. So there is something there, which is definitely, it's tickled a curiosity. It's woken up something where I'm definitely keen to explore. So I think since our listeners, our audience are now exploring with us or experiencing with us all the things we try out, it's going to be, I watch this space and we'll tell you when it happens and how it affected me.
Yeah, or share with us your experience, right? If you feel you are ready, I think go and check out Heights or Dan or maybe some other resources that are available, and make your own judgment, make your own opinion. But it's certainly a very interesting alternative of how to sort of further take care of your mental health and overall well-being, which is the core of what we are doing here. And I'm realizing that it's hard to believe, but this is our last reflection for this series.
It certainly is. There's one more episode to come, which is us looking back at the overall season. And then we're taking a break.
I'm looking forward to that too. We have a little surprise that we're working on for the summer. So let's hope that works out and we'll share more. But it's been really, really awesome ride with you guys. And hopefully this has added some inspiration and some value to you and your well-being. So enjoy.
On that cheery note, it's been lovely talking to you, Vladi.
You too. Hugs to London. You too. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. You've been listening to Naked by The Future Farm, where entrepreneurship is stripped to its vulnerable core. To learn more about our work, sign up to our newsletter or visit thefuturefarm.co, where you can also apply to be a Naked guest. Naked is produced by Dan Murray-Serter and edited by Catherine Dworkin. And remember, subscribe, follow and rate Naked to help share it with the world.